Hey, welcome back for part two. I made an executive decision to save some time that I went ahead and did a lot more work on my 220 stone and kind of got the coursework out of the way. And what I'm doing now, I'm working on my 400 grit Atoma diamond plate now to really crisp up this bevel. The great thing about diamond plates is that they stay absolutely flat. These things are mounted on a block of precision machined stainless steel. They do not hollow out. So for a repair situation where you're working on a large, long blade and you've done the coursework and gotten a lot of the excess metal out of the way, they're very good for just evening and crisping up your bevel over the entire length of the blade. And so what I've done, I want to show you close-ups. Now this is one side of the knife which has been done on the 220 stone. And you can see this bevel is pretty uneven. And I got a burr all the way across. But you see here in the center of the knife, the bevel gets a lot wider. And that is because through years of use, the center of the knife got hollowed out and the cutting edge got up into a thicker portion of the blade. This is very common in old knives. So you see here at the heel, you almost can't see the bevel. It's barely there. As we get into the center, look how wide it is, and that's what it took. Pardon my dirty finger. Slurry. That's what it took to reach the edge with a consistent angle. And here again, out at the tip, very narrow. So what I've done, rinse that finger off for you. What I've done now on one side of the blade is I've gone with a diamond plate and I have flattened and evened this entire bevel to where it's pretty consistent now. It's very crispy on this side, very much ready to go on a finer whetstone and do some real sharpening. That's kind of a meta shot right there. It's like a reflection of me talking to myself. I don't know, maybe I get a little extra points here for some artsiness. However, that is one side done. So I decided I did the difficult side first, and I decided now I'm going to show you guys the crisping process on the other side, and then we'll proceed to the finer stones. And that's going to go a lot faster. You know, this coursework, just getting enough metal out of the way in some kind of an even fashion, that the finer stones can reach the edge is, 95% of the work with an old knife like this. And that's why it takes so long. A routine knife sharpening takes just a few minutes. Very quick. Perhaps one day I'll do a video where I simply resharpen one of my knives that's already in very good shape. And you'll see how absolutely fast it goes. It's just okay, got a burr, okay, got a burr, move on to the next stone. Okay, so what we have here is that the center of this blade, we're going to work on this side, so I'm showing you this. The center of this blade was kind of hollowed out. That's why it's thicker there, and then down toward the heel it's less worn. Now, could I just sharpen this? I could say, well, the center needs work, so let's just grind on the center of the blade a lot, rather, and get it sharp, and get the whole length of the blade sharp. Yes, I can do that. I can have a long, very sharp knife. I could sit here and slice paper, and it would be all impressive. But when I put the knife on the cutting board, the center of the blade will not reach the cutting board, and that means when I'm cutting stuff, it's not going to cut all the way through. And that's no bueno. And so all of this work, basically, if it's low right here, that doesn't mean we grind there. It means we grind a bunch more everywhere else to bring the rest of the blade up to where the lowest spot is. And so what this basically means now, even though the spot that really needs to work is here, it means I'm going to be spending a lot of time grinding everything else away. Alright, so let's get going. One side's done on the Atoma 400 grit diamond plate. Of course, the tip is kind of outside the purview of the area of the knife that is out of alignment. Nothing sticking down around the tip. Tip's in great shape. So all we're doing here is just making a nice crispy bevel, and then we'll be moving on. So this will be done here very quickly. Basically just evening it up with the other side. I'm looking at how wide is the bevel on one side. Let's get the other side to where it's right there. And you hear that? Achieved a burr in like, just a few strokes. Get into this belly, a little more of a crescent shape motion right here. Basically just quickly getting done the parts of the knife that do not need a lot of work. So listen carefully. Where the burr disappears, right around here. So you can tell where I've worked and where I haven't. Alright, so I just want to show you now, the great thing about a diamond plate, even one that's a kind of a medium coarse, is it leaves a very shiny finish. So you get a very shiny finish to the bevel, and then all of a sudden you see this, kind of a satiny, unshiny area. So the great thing about, there are pluses and minuses to diamond plates. One of the pluses is, even because of the way it cuts, even a coarse diamond plate leaves you with a very nice looking area of the blade. Alright, so we're getting out of the tip area and working into the actual part of the blade that needs the work. So already, if you observe carefully, you'll see that toward the edge, it's getting already very shiny. The diamond plate removes material very quickly, but you can see this area where it's not completely shiny all the way to the top of the bevel yet. Might be more. There we go. So that center section of the knife where you see that dark line is the area of the knife that was thicker, and I'm having to take more away. And to access that, basically that means we have to do a bunch of work everywhere else. And so the first step is just spending a lot of time in this heel just to get a lot of metal out of the way so that we can get to the part of the knife that really needs the attention. Because what good is a sharp edge if it doesn't reach the cutting board? I mean, okay, so you're cutting a big melon or something, and it gets all the way through effortlessly, and then there's a little skin left at the bottom, and you have to break that on every slice. You're carving up a watermelon or something. Yeah, it's just to get a blade the right shape. in addition to being sharp, is very important. It's very much worth it. All right, so we're actually as per the usual, achieved a burr very quickly on that side. However, I can still see that there's some more material that needs to be removed here. So I'm going to do just about got it. Diamond plate has a very different kind of sound than a whetstone. At this point, we have an edge all the way down the knife. It's going to be very sharp. So I'm just trying to get the bevel a little more even. When I put this knife on the 1000 grit stone, it needs to be right. Anything I don't fix now is just going to take 3 times as long on the finer stone. So a nice ring all the way down. So we're almost ready. We're almost ready to go. We'll do just even this thing out a little bit more. Some nice long strips, just to tie it all together and make sure that all down the length of the knife is very even. Once we get off this diamond plate and onto my 1000 grit Suihiro Dabato whetstone, it's going to be very little to talk about. And I'm pretty much just going to be sharpening and allowing everybody the opportunity to just enjoy the experience of it along with myself. All right. So there's quite a burr now on the left side of the knife. And to remove that, I'm going to do 1 or 2 very quick stropping type passes. Just to, I don't want this thing digging into my 1000 grit stone and tearing it up. So I'm just gonna clean the edge a little bit. Doing that, move the burr to the other side. That's a beautiful thing. When a stropping stroke will move the burr completely from here, no burr, and you can hear it. So we'll strop this side just very lightly. Moved it back. That's good. Alright. The finer stone we get on, these stropping strokes will really clean that edge up. Ideally, you want to move on to the next stone with the burr from the previous stone standing on the edge, on the apex of the blade as much as possible. Becomes a little less critical once we get onto the fine. You know, these 200 to 400 grit stones leave quite a burr, and you know, you slap that burr down on your one of your finer stones, and it'll dig in. So just for fun, let's see if it's sharp yet. Wow, you know, bites in a little bit. Okay, so not bad for just coming off a 400 grit. It wouldn't do that before I began sharpening. So let's do a change over here. We're going to put the diamond plate away. Get rid of this for now. Bring this towel out. Get rid of some excess water. And I have just a scant few more observations to make prior to doing the next stone. This is my Suihiro Debato 1000 grit stone. I love this stone because it's so big. It's about 9 inches by 3 inches. It makes doing large blades so much easier because you can sharpen more of the knife at the same time. However, that is only good when your edge is straight and crisp, because if there are any low spots in the blade, in the edge, any areas that are concave, they won't touch the stone, and that's why it's so important to get the edge properly shaped before even getting on a fine stone like this. Alright, so not much more to say at this point. I'm going to do the 1000 grit, then we're going to do 3000 grit and 8000 grit, and then strop it, and then cut test and see how we did. Okay, that's a pass. There's a burr the entire length of the blade. I'm going to do one more pass just to make sure. Hear those little grindy noises. crackly grinding noises. It comes from just little tiny burr particles from the edge of the knife becoming dislodged and coming out on the stone. So with a finer, when you're coarse sharpening, it's not really an issue. With finer stones, I will periodically splash some fresh water on them to clear all those particles off. This side of the knife is basically done now, but I wanted to remove those particles and get a really clean, polished edge before I turn the knife over. Make sure we have no more little tiny particles of metal coming off. A smooth, polished edge is a strong edge, a durable edge. A toothy edge with a lot of micro burr and serration in it. And some cooks prefer that type of edge. They act very sharp. They bite into food, especially soft foods, very easily, and all of that. However, wherever there is unevenness along the edge is an exposed fault line for micro cracks and chips to develop, which dull your edge. Note that the sound of the burr being flicked gets a lot softer and more gentle as we get into the fine stones because the burr is finer. The burr is much smaller and finer. Alright, so we have getting a nice... This particular 1000 grit stone does begin a bit of polishing action on the blade. Some 1000 grit stones leave a very matte finish. It's amazing, for different stones depending on the composition and the particle size distribution and such. For the same grit stone, they can leave very, very different finishes to an edge. And doing the tip up in the corner here that doesn't otherwise necessarily get a whole lot of wear. Those nice black trails of ground metal on the white stone. Very nice. When you get your bevel right, the finish sharpening takes very little time. However, because of all that grinding we did and being on the diamond plate, I'm going to do a few more passes on each side just to make sure any unevennesses are gone. And the whole thing is nicely polished and symmetrical. Hitting my knuckles on the side of the counter. This knife is so long. Smack the tip of the knife into my improvised camera platform. That's alright, didn't hurt it. I love that sound. Now, I know earlier I showed you the sound off the quartz stone of going. You can really hear now this edge is getting way sharper than it was earlier. The narrower that edge gets, the more pronounced this beautiful musical ring gets in the blade when you go across it. Do not go this way ever. If I did that, even though we're barely halfway into the sharpening process, if I did that right now, my thumb would be sliced open and I'd be on my way to the emergency room. So we are not going to do that. Nope. Alright, I gotta bring the stone back or I'm gonna keep... That's alright. If I get a bump knuckle, I'll survive. Just smoothing out this whole thing. Yeah, nice and polished and even. Oh yeah, that's looking really nice. Get back on this other side. Some loose particulates here. Get rid of that. So note the difference, no burr on this side. Burr on this side. The difference is getting much fainter now, but I can feel it. Beginning on the next stone, it won't make much of a sound, so y'all will have to just trust me when I tell you that the burr is there. This side's looking so pretty. You can see how wide that bevel is, how much metal I had to take away just to get to the point where I could get this 1000 grit stone on the edge at an angle that I desire. This knife is going to be very, very, very sharp. Going to be a beautiful thing. Alright, let's stay on the stone just a little while longer. The 1000 grit stone range 1000 to 1500, or let's say maybe 1800 to 1500, really where the magic happens. If you don't get this right, everything I do on the polish and grit stones kind of be for naught. be polishing a dull edge. We don't want that. Or polishing a overly chippy, toothy edge. So it'll look great, it'll be all shiny, yada yada, but not really what we're after. This is a stubbornly unpolished spot right here. But I have a burr, so I may have to go. I have some errant scratches here from the sharpening anyway, so I'm probably going to have to do a little bit of spot polishing with some very, very fine sandpaper down close to the edge after I'm done sharpening. All right, it's time to strop on this stone, clean the burr up, and then I'm going to show you cleaning the stone, and then we're going to move on to polishing stones with minimal interruption henceforth. Tiny flecks of burr coming away on the stone. Get rid of them. It's a good thing. You want those tiny flecks of burr to come away. But then you don't want to drag your sharp edge across them and chip it. Oh yeah. One more pass on this side. Very light, very light.